Hello guys, it's been a while, so we are back with another video. So for this one, we want to look ahead at noderad. So we're using noderad in rad systems, and we want to look at how to post data into an endpoint. So we have an endpoint that we have created, and I'm basically using an API that is available for me in the Play Store. Sorry, it's available for me in Postman. So it's just a simple API that gets some data, posts some data to the database. So I'm assuming now you have your API which you can access like this. So your API has to be Node.js. If your API is in Postman, you have this option to select which language you are using. So it's really up to you to decide which one to use. So I'm using Node.js and Axios. So okay, we'll do that later on. Okay, so now we have this. We have this data. So this is the data that we are getting and posting to the database of our API. So we want to get this data and post it. Now we are going to look at two things. We're going to look at how to parameterize our links and how to get this data to our code. Oh, good. So now we go ahead and copy these. Just copy all of it all the way down to here, and I'm going to go ahead and create my endpoint. So I've already created my endpoint, which is using the subscription controller. Now here you have this option where you highlight the name of the endpoint. Then you're just going to take everything all the way up to that point and delete it. I want to delete it all the way to that point, and we want to go ahead and post our code here. Now there's somewhere where we get a stringify JSON. So what you do is, instead of doing a console.log here, you write less.ok. So this is just going to be getting our data and posting it to the API. Good. Now the next thing you need to do here is, you notice we have the username, the API, the plan name, plan descriptions, all these. So generally we might need this data to come from a field. Now what we want to do is write a parameter for this. Now parameters are just things that stay here in the link that are waiting for an input. So what we do is we go ahead and write a parameter like this. Good. So we need the plan name. So we're just going to come here and call this plan name. So that is going to be our first parameter, and then you're going to create our second parameter, which is going to be description. They don't really have to be the same as the values inside the object. Then you're going to create another parameter here, which is called the amount, and you're going to create now the last parameter, which is called the currency. Good. Now, so what we need to do here now is to come here and now declare constants. So you're going to come here and say let plan name. So know that I'm getting this plan name from this parameter here, and you're going to say is equals to request.params dot plan name. So this is just the same thing as that. I'm going to come here and say let description is going to be equal to request dot parameters dot description. And we're going to say let amount is equals to request dot params dot amount, and then we're going to say the last one, get currency, which is going to be equal to request dot params dot currency. Good. So we already have this now. So all we need to do is go replacing everything that we have here with it. We're going to come here and say plan name, plan name, the description. You're going to replace this description, and then the amount, you're going to replace this with the amount there, and then you're going to replace this with the currency. Good, now we are done with this. So the other thing we need to do is get the username. So the username I'm getting from my currently logged in user. So now for this one, you write it like this: request.user user.username, and then for our API key is going to be request.user.amount. API key. So this is what we need from here. It's going to be request.user.api key, request.user.username. Alright, so there we go. Now we are done with that. So our endpoint is ready to receive parameters, and all we need to do now is in our front end we now need to pass these parameters. So know that these ones are the usernames, this and the API key, we are getting it from the currently logged in user, so we are not declaring them as parameters here. So we're going to save that and regenerate our project. Now we're just going to go to our front end to where we want to create now this page, and that's where we're going to start writing our code. We're going to create an input field, assign it a vModel, so every time we enter that input field there, we get us a particular response back to our code. Good, now let's go ahead and see if we can pass those parameters. So I've written this code in here, the builder, and we now want to go ahead and write some code for the queue input. So this way I'm just going to write my code. So I'm just basically going to show you how to put this field first. Okay, so I'm going to create a queue input here, and then it's going to be outlined vModel is going to be equal to what do we call this? The first one is going to be the plan name. So this doesn't have to be the same as whatever we have in our backend. It has to be just something that you will remember. So I'm just using plan name because it's what we have already used. Then here, let's have the description. Then we have what do we have? We have the amount. We have description, amount, and currency. And the last one is going to be the currency. Okay, we don't really have to even write the whole of it, so we can have placeholders. It's going to be equal to this. So we can call this name, then enter this. And then here we're going to put in this and say enter amount. Good, so now we are done. Now these vModels have to be variables inside our data function, so we're going to go ahead and pass those functions. So the first one is going to be the plan name. We'll come here and say plan name, we want it to be empty, and then you can have the description. It's also going to be empty. We're going to have the amount, leave it empty, and the currency, leave it empty. So we want these values to be empty by default. So every time we enter those values, then these values are going to be entered here every time we type something in the input field. So good, so far so good. Now the next thing you need to do is go ahead and create a mountain function. So I'm writing a mountain function because I want to first see in real time every time we enter those values. We're going to come here and create mounted, and we're going to just come here and put a comma. Every time you finish a function, there's another one below it, you put a comma. So good. Now in here we want to now get our endpoint, which we have created here, which is called the subscription create sub. So I'm just going to copy this up to that point, copy it, and I'm going to come back here and now write my code. So you're going to say this dot API. Okay, and then here we're going to pass in API.get, and then we're going to pass in the name of the endpoint, the link to the endpoint, and then you're going to say dot then, and then you're going to write response. So we want to push this response and get something here. So we're going to say let results is equals to response dot data. So this is what you're going to be getting back from this response. Good. Now here at the bottom here we can decide to write something else. So we can say here, come here and create another value and call this show. So the show value is going to be an array, and we want to show if there's some errors or responses from the API. So this is what we're going to be using. So we're going to access this using this dot show. This dot show is going to be equal to results. Now the result is going to be equal to these results at the top here. All right. Now being done with that, so the next thing you need to do now is to now handle errors. So you're just going to come here and say response. Okay, and then it's going to be equal to this dot loading. We want to now stop the loading option once we have gotten our response. So good, we are okay with this. So every time we enter some values here, we're going to get some data. Now remember, our link needs some parameters. We put some parameters here. So we have the plan name, description, amount, and currency. Now remember, every time you're passing parameters, you have to be in order. So if you wrote plan name first, whatever that needs to be, the first place is the plan name. So I'm just going to test this. So our parameters, we let them here. So the plan name is going to be a home plan. The description is going to be whatever we are going to create here. So it's going to say test run. Now the amount, so remember we are getting this data from here. Amount is going to be $20. 20. And the currency, now the currency is going to depend on the value that's going to be given here. So for my situation is going to be the currency. So for this one, we're just going to go ahead and pass Kenya shillings. So let me see how they're handling that. Oh, for here it's KES capital. Okay. Now, since we are getting this value here as an array, the one we want to show the data response, so we now need to declare it in the front end somewhere here. So just going to come here and say we want to show. So every time, if we go back to our app here, let's just check the progress. Good. So now you can see it says subscription plan has been created successfully. Why? Because we have entered these values here in our endpoint, which are the Wahome plan, test plan, Kenya shillings, the values, and the currency. Now we need to now go back to where we have this. Now we want, when we enter all these values and we click on enter on our button that's called submit, we created the plan. So we're going to do this. We're going to create a button here at the bottom. So let's say qbtn, and the label should be equals to create subscription. Okay, and the click event is going to be equal to a function that we are going to create. So let's leave it blank for now. Let's go ahead and first create that function. So this function is going to be created in our methods. So we copy these, okay, or we can just cut it because we no longer need it to be in the mounted. I wanted it so that we can only see before without clicking a button. So we're going to create a function called create. So we're going to call it create sub, and now this function is going to be written in our method. So we're just going to copy the same thing we're going to paste the same thing we have created here, and we have it here. So now instead of having this as static data, because these are our parameters, we want these parameters to now be values from the input field here. So we are going to change this and use this kind of arrow here, and we are going to come here. Now these ones allow us to be able to push our variables inside the string. So the name is going to change and be like this. So this is how you always write your variables inside here. So the name is going to be this, the plan name. So you're just going to come here and say this dot plan name. The description is going to be this, copy, and you're going to come here and say, this dot description. Now remember, the amount is also the same as here, so we're going to copy and come here and say this dot amount. The last one is currency, so come here and we have this currency here, and you're going to come and say this dot currency, something like that. So now every time we enter these values here and we click on submit, we are going to be passing these parameters to our link. Good. Now remember, we created this function called create sub, so just going to copy it up to that point, and you're going to go to our button inside our click event here. You're going to paste that there. So save this. So we expect every time we enter data here and we click on submit here, we are going to be getting a response from our endpoint. So that's generally what we want to achieve. So let's go ahead and see if this is actually going to be working. So I'm going to pause until this is ready and come back. Alright, so we are back. We're back now, so it's ready. So every time we enter some data here, we should expect to get a response here at the top. So I'm going to come here and say test plan name, then you're going to have my description. The amount should be 300. Sorry, this one has to be currency, so the currency is going to be Kenya shilling. So when we click on this, our value is going to be passed, and you're going to get our status response back here. So we have successfully created a plan. So because now we don't know if we have created our plan, I'm now going to go ahead and engage the second API, so which is called get table data. Now the get table data is going to allow us to be able to get the data from the API endpoint that we have just passed our data to. So we want to confirm that our data has been pushed to the API. So this is it. So I'm just going to copy this, and we're going to create our endpoint here. Or instead of this, there's somewhere where I was getting some data from, which is this. This is the transaction history. Validate, I don't know. Yeah, so we want to get this data from here. So we're just going to change this to subscription plans. I think that's it. I think that's the endpoint. Let me just confirm if that is the endpoint name. Okay, so it's called subscription plans. So that's what we want to do. So instead of editing this from here, I'm just going to go ahead and check the endpoint where it is. I'm going to pause and check the endpoint, then we can change from there. Alright, so I found the endpoint. So basically what we want to do is to change this to now fit into what I want, subscription plan. So kindly note that this is how this endpoint API allows me to access this table. So yours might be different, but if yours is just the same as this, so the same will apply. So I want to save that, and I'm now going to go to my page where we have the site builder, and we are going to create another mountain function. Now inside this mountain function, we want to go ahead and fetch some data. Okay, so just going to come here and create the mounted. All right, now inside here we're going to call our API, which is going to be equals to this and API.get. Now here we're going to call the API, which is pay/pay. So it's basically what I have called this API endpoint that I've edited. So it's going to be called to people/payees, and then here we're going to paste it here, and we're going to do .then, and here we're going to pass in the response. All right, so we're going to push it here, and you're going to come here and say let less is equals to response dot data. Okay, now from here we're going to come here and say this dot show is equals to, okay, so we're just going to call the showy. Let's call it showy. Okay, so we're going to call this showy is equals to response. Let's call this response. All right, then let's handle once the processing is done. So we're going to say this dot loading is equals to false. Good, so we are now able to display some data here. So let's go ahead and now put in this value here. We're going to come here and say div. Okay, then let's say show we. All right, so this is what we want to show in the front end once processing has been done. So we're getting from that table from in our backend. So let's see what we get here. Okay, so there seems to be an error. Let me confirm. Computed. All right, so this error because inside our mountain function we have not put this comma here. So put this comma and save again. So it should have that error going away. All right, now let's see what we get from here. So our response should be coming automatically. So there we go. We have the business name and you have the test plan name, the one we just created, my description, the plan amount. So let's go ahead and create another one. So you just come here and say final name, description name, call it 3400, and the currency should be Kenya shillings. So here we're going to say successfully created, and now here we are supposed to be getting the plan name again. So I'm just going to reload this. Okay, now that our data has been loaded, we can now come here and see the one we just created, which is called the final name, the plan description name. So this is basically how you work with the API. So we have been able to post some data into our API and got back our response. So now you can go ahead and work with these APIs how you want. You can loop them the way we did in the other videos. So that's generally it. So to support this channel, you can always leave a like, subscribe. You have an error or an issue you want to be solved, you can also maybe ask a question in the comments. I'll try as I can to answer your questions. And yeah, So that will be it for this video, guys, and see you in the next one. Have a good one.